Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Need to Nerd podcast. I'm your host, Spencer, and I am joined by my co host, a man who has not reached his full potential as Avatar, Wes Singleton.
I can tell you right now that I have gotten Pokemon gym badges in all of those elements, so I could possibly be the Avatar.
Pokemon Master, Wes Singleton. So today, we are continuing our series of reviewing Avatar books. This one will be book 1 from the Legend of Korra. It's exciting, West. This is a show that I have fond memories of. Even though I didn't watch it as a child, I actually watched the show as an adult.
Yeah, Korra was, I think, like one of the first television shows I ever aired on the website through which it was being distributed on TV, right? Like I went to the Nickelodeon website every week to watch the new episode of Korra.
Yeah.
And that was a thing that they anticipated happening, and that was a really cool thing in relation to our TV episode talking about when and how we got into see a television show that they were prepared for people who didn't have television and cable to watch it on. They still wanted that audience.
Yeah. Well, before we get into the podcast review for book 1, Air. Ooh, we're starting with Air. Let's go. Before we get into book 1, Air, we do just want to mention our Discord. So if you want to head on over to our Discord, check that out. And I also want to give a big anti-shout out to the company in which we post our videos. I won't say their name for this podcast, and their parent company, because we mentioned Black Lives Matter on the last podcast, and we mentioned COVID-19. We got basically shadow banned. West, I don't know if you know that.
I saw your tweet.
Yeah.
It's not ideal. And clearly we're interested in doing it again.
Yeah, I just don't care. It's just
oh no, yeah.
I'm gonna talk about what I'm gonna talk about, and if you want to tell me that, it's just so weird. It's I'm not presenting any specific information on it, other than if you want to donate. We obviously had another, pretty horrendous event happen, in the Black community the other day, and I think that it's time that we, hold police accountable, and I'm going to stand up for that in any platform that I have. So if they don't want me to talk about that, that's fine. I don't care. I'm going to. So anyway, with that being said, if you want to talk about things that are a little less depressing and cheer yourself up, our Discord is a great place to do it. We got memes posting, we got pictures of animals. I plan on talking about this show as I watch it in there. We've got Magic the Gathering content. It's a fun place to be, and it's growing slowly, and we really appreciate that everybody's there. Everybody that's there now, and you can be a part of there. Just check out the link in the show notes. With that being said, West, I'm gonna do the sells it this week instead of you, because I'm gonna read this book 1. After the conclusion of the 100-Year War, Avatar Aang and Fire Lord Zuko had brought the people of the 4 nations together and founded the United Republic. And founded the United Republic of Nations. That was a weird one for me to read. With its capital being called Republic City, a large metropolis-powered steampunk type technology, such as cars and motorcycles. Aang and Katara had 3 children, the youngest of which was Tenzin, the only airbender of the 3 siblings. At the present time, 70 years after the end of the 100-Year War, Korra, a rebellious 17-year-old girl, is set to complete her Avatar training to fulfill her role as Avatar. She's already mastered waterbending, earthbending, and firebending by this point. And at the beginning of the series, Korra travels to Republic City to start her airbending training with Tenzin. This is different than the start of the other show. What were your first thoughts of the first episode? Don't get into any spoilers. Don't get into the plot. But you sit down, you watch that very first episode. What did you? It was so different from Avatar: The Last Airbender for me. What about you?
That's the observation, is contrast, right? Everything is being cast in contrast, beginning with the title of the season, Book 1, Air. Air being the only element, not the title of a chapter of Avatar: The Last Airbender. So in a sense, we're coming home. We're coming back to where we were.
Right.
But at the same time, everything is different. We're clearly going to explore a world and a life of being an avatar where there are people trying to control you, where the world is not too busy to notice, and you can't just travel everywhere you possibly wanted on a sky bison. We're very constrained.
Oh yeah, this whole entire book takes place in one city. You know,
it's a limited setting. Authority figures are present everywhere. And how you develop relationships with those authority figures is covered very intensely. It's a little bit of a period piece.
Yeah, definitely.
It doesn't. You can't really know what decade it's referring to because it's not quite that close. But
sure.
It's clearly about a time when technology is just becoming something big.
Yeah, so I think for most people most people that I interact with experienced Avatar: The Last Airbender again, or for the first time, just this year. And if you're wondering to yourself, well, why should I continue with this series that doesn't have the same amount of love that first series has? It tells a very different but interesting story. And if you only want to watch one season, I personally haven't finished this series. This is the only season that I've watched, and it was quite good. So I was kind of surprised to hear, people not liking this show as much because the first season is amazing. It's a home run. It's a knock out of the park. It has, it has romance. It has betrayal. It has, one of the things that we talked about so much during the reviews for Avatar: The Last Airbender is how good of a story it told. And I think that is true of Book 1 Air for Legend of Korra.
Yeah, I think part of it is it's not the happy, fun-loving adventure story that people really desire. There are elements. That's, of course, a big part of making any children's show succeed. But it is not as free and lighthearted as Avatar: The Last Airbender often felt. And I think that the reason the commentary on the show is different is you have to keep in mind that this show came out in a different era. Came out in 2012. Anyone who wanted to watch it got to watch the whole thing. And anyone who talked about that did it in the space of the internet without any lens of nostalgia. You were getting their raw, just meeting the thing criticism, and as we know on the internet, the loudest criticism is often the most unhelpful and unconstructive, usually trying to tear things down instead of build up a franchise.
So, Wes, I actually don't know. Have you watched all 4 books for this show?
No. Have I watched all of it? Yes, I watched the entire series. I have not yet finished my rewatch of the entire series. I'm only in season 2.
Okay.
But, yeah, I watched the whole thing.
Okay. So for me, I watched this show for the first time on demand on Comcast at my parents' house. I didn't have cable when I moved out of my parents' house, and so often I would go and watch this show with my little brother on demand on Comcast on demand before it was called Xfinity on Demand.
Yeah.
And this show was different. It was grittier. It was, I mean, as we got through Avatar: The Last Airbender, it started to get that way. And this show continues that progression. And, I really, really liked and appreciated season 1 of this show.
I would say that Legend of Korra did for the Avatar series what Pokemon does not do, which is it does not build on what it's already done.
Hey, give Journey some credit. They're trying.
I agree. But the classic Ash gets a total reset except for Pikachu and doesn't remember how to battle like a master anymore. Kept everything returning to the initial lighthearted, just like joy of playing with Pokemon, right?
Sure.
In this show, however, we don't spend as much time with the joy of experiencing elements.
Oh, not at all. I mean,
right? There's a lot of.
Go ahead.
we're right up at, we already know how to use most of them, and the one we can't use is a lifelong struggle. Right? Korra was a firebender and an earthbender just after she was a waterbender and before she became a master at any of those things. And Air always waited. That is such a different experience.
Yeah, I think that we've kind of both talked about our initial impressions or our initial. But before we move on to like full blown review spoilers, why don't you just talk to me about your very first impression of this show the first time you watched it?
I was so excited. The first time I watched it, I think I watched it like as soon as I was able to. I had known it was coming for a while, loved Avatar, ready to watch this. And I watched it and I was just really excited, I think. We get into it so quick that by the end of the first episode, you are acquainted with the setting of where the majority of the story takes place. And you're already beginning to see the tensions. So I ended that first episode with like that, I'm getting it now, with that like goosebumped what's going to happen next feeling. Like I cannot wait for next week.
Yeah. If you haven't watched the first book for this show yet, I highly encourage you to pause this, come back when you have, because we're about to dive deep and talk about some spoilers. With that being said, Let's get into our favorite storyline. You know what's kind of weird for me? I mean, maybe it's not weird for me, but I remember liking this so much as a young kid was the bending tournaments. Holy crap, as a young kid, the pro bending was chef's kiss. It was so interesting to see this game built around these elements. It was also interesting to note Air was left out. There's only one airbender in the world, and so...
Well, 4 in time, but yeah, absolutely. It's just not
sure before he had kids, but you know, of the people of age that could compete in pro bending, you know, there's one, and he's not going to do it. Also, we don't even know if the airbenders would want to compete in these, but so the storyline of like the actual tournament, you know, is kind of like a mini storyline in there that was really intriguing for me, because they used it as a way to challenge the characters, create relationships. They even used it for, you know, obviously they used the sponsorship as like a way to get...
it was at the center of the whole thing, right?
Yeah, exactly.
From beginning to end, pro bending moves the plot forward. They keep coming back to it every single time. From Korra leaving Airbender Island to go check out pro bending and get in trouble that way. From that to the final attack on Amon and his forces, where they're stationed up in the pro bending arena. Like it's at the core of all of it. It's actually one of the most important buildings in the city in terms of storytelling from a setting perspective.
Yeah.
Because when you get to a city being your setting, the places within that city start to become individual, well set apart bits of setting.
I think that while that was my favorite storyline, you know, at the age of 22, the first time I watched this, during the rewatch, you know, my favorite storyline is honestly Bolin's feelings. Like having
Bolin.
Bolin is the sweetest young man that has no clue what's going on, and you know, he was just something that I appreciated a lot of different aspects of his character. He, you know, when things didn't go his way, right? He didn't. I mean, he pouted for a minute, but like he got over it, continued, and just moved forward. I don't know. His story was one that was endearing to me, of somebody that can just be sweet, and also, you know, show that when things don't go your way, it's okay, and you know, we can move forward.
Yeah, I'd love to just take a moment and examine Bolin and Mako, because they are, while I think that they're really formative experiences, don't get talked a lot about. they are who they are from the pure reason of having been street urchins, right? Having a period of time in their life where they have nothing but each other is really important for understanding both of those people. And I think you have to understand the role that both of them took within that space. Mako being the everything's going to be okay, I'm going to handle it, right? And that's a very serious attitude, right? And Mako shows it the whole season. Bolin, on the other hand, has to keep his brother caring, has to keep his brother going, has to make sure that there is fun in their lives. Their lives are worth living. And I think Bolin does a really good job of that. And he is always looking for, when things don't go well, okay, I have to get up and keep going because otherwise I wouldn't have made it this far. And I have to make sure that this part is worth it too.
Yeah, you know, their relationship between the two of them is also interesting. One thing that I remembered while you were talking just now is just, you know, them finding the base because of Mako. Like, so Bolin gets captured, right? And then
Yeah.
they're like, how are we gonna find this, you know, through this underground system? And Mako's like, wait a second, I know where they took him. And because he was blindfolded, it's a really, you know, I think fun moment for the show that, you know, it really connected itself in a lot of different areas. I don't know, it's just good storytelling and something that I really appreciated. What about you? What was your favorite storyline during this part of this first season?
I think that the one I examined the most, a teenager and her role models. And her role models having no idea what to do with a teenager who just wants space. So
I really,
which is not an individual storyline, but
yeah.
lots of different characters participate in this.
You know, it's funny because I don't know that it's clear to me how well Korra knows Tenzin.
Sure.
Like, I get the feeling that they don't know each other very well. But that she is obviously understanding that she's kind of his dad mom person. So like their relationship is one of like I am your dad. Do you know what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah. I agree. I think that the Aang was actually really freed in his travels because there was no one really who actually
no
knew
idea
in person any of the other avatars, right? But Korra has been surrounded for as long as she can remember is by people who look at her and see the great force that Aang was, as
right.
well as miss the great comfort that Aang was.
Yeah, it's funny too because like there's a specific scene where all of these people are watching her firebend and earthbend, and like I think it's in the first episode. It's either in the first or second episode, and you're like, why are all of these politicians getting involved in the training of this you know, this person that's supposed to be not above it, but like beside it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
the Avatar is absolutely supposed to be an arbitrator, someone who sits between all of the factions of the world. And I think that while Aang had a successful world because he united the separate bits of all of the world, right? Then those united factions, right? The United Republic of Nations or whatever it's called, now has a different relationship with this new Avatar. And it really shows, right?
It does. It kind of reminds me of the fall of the Dragon Riders in the Aragon series, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Where it's like they're supposed to be this thing that bridges everyone and is like.
But everyone wants to keep their own now.
Yeah, and it's just like, at some point, you know, if you take these people who are supposed to be arbitrators and make them, I don't know, weaponize them, then they become the bad guy. And I think that Korra feels that a lot through this season. I mean, if you look at... Go ahead.
Everyone is looking to have Korra add her symbolism to what they're doing. and they're looking to control her power. And Korra, that's the last thing she wants. And she knows that she came from a place where people were trying to control her, but in a protecting way. And now that she's in Republic City, they're trying to control her in a take advantage of you way. And she doesn't see the difference at first. She learns it eventually.
Yeah, I mean,
at
you
some
look.
point.
Go ahead. I was gonna say, you look at Tarlok, right? Like,
Yeah.
Tarlok is. It's so funny. You know, I did a really good job of not spoiling this show for my wife, like as we were watching it, because she got, you know, she's talking about all kinds of stuff, and we'll get into it. But like, Tarlok is a good example of like, he is what is wrong with politics getting involved in something like the Avatar.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to, you know, it also, once he got involved in the police force, it got worse. Like, his own private police force was just a bad idea. Like, every step of the way, he's getting, you know, next leveled in a sense. You know, he's one step behind his brother. And because of that, you know, he falls. And because of that, she falls.
So that's actually not his motivation, right? He doesn't realize that Amon is his brother.
Well, that's true, but he's still behind him in a lot of ways. Like, he thinks he's playing Amon, but Amon is really playing him.
Yes, that's absolutely true.
So, it's true that he doesn't know that Amon is his brother, but, like, he's still getting played.
Well, his ambition in that moment is absolutely to take advantage of unrest to grab power for himself. He's trying to Palpatine.
Yeah. So, are there any other storylines that were, like, really big for you? I think that the bloodbending storyline for me was a little less interesting. It was pretty... I think it was pretty interesting for Debonair. I think Amon's entire stuff was interesting for Debonair. At one point, we were laying in bed, and... You know, it's the part where he's giving his speech and he's talking about getting hurt by a firebender, and then he takes off his mask. And she's like, why does anybody believe that? He can be attacked by a firebender and still be a waterbender. Like, there's the two don't have to be correlated. And kind of, she was like, and I did a good job not spoiling it for her. But I think that to her, that line, that... just that whole dark history of this was really interesting to her. It was really sad for me. Like, I don't know. I don't like child abuse, so like it makes me really depressed. But
when parents are bad to their children, I agree that that's a really frustrating bit of television to have to watch. But it also, you know, at least fills some amount of where their character motivations are. I do think that it's true storytelling to have your poor choices that you make be motivated from some form of suffering you had earlier in life, even though that doesn't justify those choices.
Yeah, I'm not saying that they're justified, and
oh, I know.
I'm just saying, like, it's hard for me to watch, and I think that it's also one of the reasons that this show was... I don't even know that I would change it, though. Like, it is a very interesting and important thing. Like, you know, the actions and the pain that you cause the people that you have the biggest influence over, you know, certainly can contribute to how they will act and behave in the future and the way that they will treat people and the type of people that they will become. It was just... I think it was just one that was hard to watch for me, especially considering, like... just how little those kids were that he was doing this to.
Absolutely.
I also can't find his name.
Amon's given name?
No. Amon's dad.
Oh, I don't remember it, but it does get talked about. But it's not super pressing.
Sure.
The other storyline that I wanted to talk about, or at least make a note of, is that it was Love Triangle City up in there.
Oh my gosh, dude. 3 love triangles. Or at least 2. Why am I thinking 3?
There is actually a love quadrangle happening. There is absolutely a...
sure.
Like our four young protagonists are all tangled up in each other for a long time.
I actually have a question about that. Do you think that Bolin, is it Bolin? It's Bolin, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that Bolin likes Korra, or do you think Bolin likes the idea of dating the Avatar?
Bolin likes the idea of dating anyone.
That's true. Okay, that's fair.
One. Two, Bolin is actually, I think, one of the few people who looks at Korra and doesn't think Avatar first off. Thinks, my friend, who's an absolute badass, and she's pretty. Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think that Bolin really actually is so good to Korra, despite it not being a successful romance.
I also like
because
strong,
he
scary
looks at
women, so
Korra
I
as a
get that.
person.
I
You also like what?
I said I also like strong, scary women, so I get that.
Oh, totally. And like I do think that Bolin, of course, is like the most left out show, except for probably the most crabby of all people in the entire series.
I lost you.
Which, of
I
course,
lost
is
you for a
Lin
minute
Beifong.
there.
Oh.
You said Bolin is the most what?
Bolin is the most left out of a good time in romance this season, except for maybe Lin Beifong, but that's because her love triangle resolved 40 years ago or whatever.
Yeah, let's talk about...
I just want to talk about Tenzin for a minute.
Yeah, I was going to say, that was the person I wanted to talk about too. First of all, I don't like Tenzin.
I don't think you're supposed to. I don't think Tenzin comes off as likable.
Okay, I'm glad, because I really don't like... I think he's kind of a jerk. And it's funny, because you start watching season 2 and you're like, yeah, you're kind of a jerk, dude.
Yeah, I think that Tenzin is very interesting because he is the... he takes the brunt of the adults aren't finished as people either.
To be fair, I think that Lin also has some... there's so much wrong with the adults in this show.
Yeah.
You know, I think Lin has some huge issues. I think that... I mean, obviously, is it Mr. Sato? Is that his name?
Yeah.
And he's got some...
Satoshi Sato.
Yeah. He's got... I think it's Hiroshi.
Hiroshi Sato, yeah.
Yeah, he's got some big issues. Like, the adults are not the most likable people, but Tenzin is, like, supposed to be this mentor. I don't know, he kind of acts... And this is what I was getting to earlier, right? Where it's like... You see the respect that Tenzin has for Korra as the Avatar.
Yeah.
But he also just treats her really weird.
Well, first off, dad. That's what he thinks when he looks at her.
So that's the problem, right? Is like...
It's the underlying issue, is that...
He doesn't know how to handle it.
He's taking his grief out on Korra a lot of the time.
Yeah, it does feel that way, and it's like... I don't know, it's frustrating to watch. That doesn't mean that it's bad, right? Like, Dolores Umbridge is great writing, right? Like, the fact that you can get this many people to hate an individual like Dolores Umbridge, that's good writing. You know, I wish we knew who wrote that book to, like, give them credit for that, but...
we'll figure it out one day. I'm sure we'll uncover it. It might actually have been Harry Potter himself. I really don't know.
Yeah, that's fair. But Tenzin is like... It's so frustrating to be like, dude... She wants to do what's, like, she's doing what she thinks is right, but she also is a human, and you're, like, taking away her humanity for political and personal reasons, and it's really hard to watch.
I also think it asks, who was Aang to his only son that was an airbender? Because... Tenzin as an airbender is wildly different than Aang is as an airbender, not counting the rest of his avatar identity. Like, Aang, when he pops out of that iceberg, right? Having more or less mastered airbending, right?
I also think that Aang is just different from the other airbenders.
I don't know if he is, because his role model is a chaotic individual, is a fun-loving individual. I don't think that Aang is a fully chaotic good individual. I think he's more of a neutral good individual, but he has a fun side. He wants fun.
Yeah.
Right? And that, even as an adult, you know he would want that. And Tenzin never got it. Clearly, it all went to Boomy. all of the fun.
We don't
to
see that
be in
yet. We
Tenzin
don't see that
had
yet.
to
Spoilers.
Sit down. You see like a frame of Boomy.
Sure. I think you're right. We do. But the thing is like you do see the good parts of Tenzin. Like I think he's a good dad. I think that he's a good husband.
He has a strong sense of duty.
Yeah, he loves people. Even Lin, he like really cares that he hurt Lin. And so it's like okay, you're this really caring person. Why can't you be that towards Korra? And I think it just frustrates me.
I really think it's because unwritten somewhere in there, right? Aang fed Tenzin nothing but airbender discipline, nothing but monk, right?
That's perfectly capable from Aang, right? Like he's such a this is my job, I have to do this kind of person that like if
I
he
have to make sure that I'm passing on
Right.
another fully trained airbender to the world.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Kind of like a Luke passing on the Jedi arts later on type of thing.
Right.
And I think that he comes down a bit too hard on Tenzin, and I think that Tenzin, having only had one airbender teacher, seeing only one model of it, knows discipline.
Right.
Not flow, discipline.
Yeah, that's fair.
Which is weird because I think that we talk about the elements and like what they do. It's a very earthbendery style of discipline. Like but like at the same time, Tenzin is like, you need discipline in order to master being free, is what he's like telling Korra when he's asking her to do the swinging fan thing.
Yeah.
I forget what that's called.
No, I think that's absolutely right. So, let's talk. Is there anything that you like? I don't know, didn't vibe with? Anything that I mean, obviously we were talking about like how Tenzin came across to us, but is there anything that watching it you just didn't like? You wanted to change?
It's hard to tell exactly where this feeling comes from, but it was hard to watch the rise of violent conflict in the city to like settle a dispute of rights.
Wow. I wonder if that's because you watched it right now.
Well, I think that that's a part of it, but I think I also got older, right? Like I think when
True.
I watched it before, I was able to I think that before I would have been more able to sit through World War II movies as well, right? Like I think that just these days now I look at fascism on a screen and I see the reflection of fascism in real life, which I know is a long way to push things, but at the same time, like Amon's rise to power is absolutely one of where there's the framework of liberation, but in the form of tearing down those of high status, as opposed to a framework of liberation where you raise the base level for everyone else.
Right. It's funny, right? Because he makes it. I mean, it's classic, right? He's making it seem like these non-benders are oppressed, and to Amon's point, you look at the type of jobs that benders can do in this city. They've used bending to create new types of jobs for people to advance civilization. The problem is that benders also have it rough in those jobs. You look at Mako, his job sucks. His job's
lightning bending in a power plant. Absolutely.
His job is so grueling and bad. He makes no money. So it's like Amon is like, he's using this divisive tactic when it's like, dude, these benders don't have it good. Like, it's not like all of a sudden there's this inequality caused by this.
Well, I think that there is one aspect where we see class. We see the suffering that comes from having class systems, right? And
yes,
Mako is a firebender, and he has the privilege of being a firebender, but he is still very working class, no education, no family name or money, right? And he's stuck to a very limited perspective within that.
Right.
And we do see in every fully integrated bending society we see in the Avatar world, the benders of that place do a very important role for that society. I think of Omashu's mail system as being the right way to use earthbending in a productive way for that society.
Here's the problem that I'm having with what you're saying right now, right? Like, you're talking about the privilege that Mako has as a bender, but if you look at the highest class of people, right, Cabbage Corp, being, and whatever the Sato company is called, both of these are non-benders. They're the richest people in Republic City.
Mm-hmm. But they're not the most politically powerful people in Republic City.
How are they not?
They're not, because they don't sit at the seat of government, right?
Right, but anybody can get into the seat of government in the city. That doesn't have anything to do with you're a bender.
It's an old money, new money situation. The Sato Corp and Cabbage Corp are new money. Bending is old money in this metaphor.
Okay.
Right? They have like name recognition. They have although also I just want to take a moment to acknowledge that there are only 2 voiced people on the council of Republic City, and that's probably why
I was going to say, you have no idea if all these people are benders. There's 7 of them or something. Like, I don't know. I don't know why I'm getting angry. I think I'm relating this too much to real life.
Well, no, I think that like it's a really good example. But 100%, the thing that Amon is really using is
divisiveness.
Permission is also that the most powerful violence that happens in Republic City comes from benders. Right?
Is that even true? Is it not him? I mean, technically he's a bender, but like
until he shows up, it is, because the triads, right?
Right.
The
that's fair.
Criminal organizations around benders are the major show of force.
Sure.
And think about who does the policing in the city.
Yeah, that's
Only
actually
metal benders.
That's actually a really good point. This is actually something that a lot of people had an issue with this show that I want to talk about because I don't understand the issue. So we have bloodbending and metal bending as 2 things that are no longer unique to individuals. And it really bugs me that people had such a big problem with this. Like, they're like, oh, they broke the rules of bending. And it's like, well, hold on. These are things that people have learned that they can now pass on to other people. Like, what is stopping Toph from teaching her daughter and her daughter from teaching all of the most talented earthbenders how to... I don't understand why people have such a... I mean, they're like, it's an uproar. Like, I don't know if you're on TikTok, dude, but like, people are like mad about this. And it's like, I mean, that's how life works. People progress, they improve. The bloodbending one, I can understand that people don't like that, but it's not like they had one person that broke the rule. That person was then able to teach his kids to break the rule, and nobody else can break the rule. And I'm a little shocked to hear like the just amount of disdain.
Naruto.
I just have not watched it. Tell me about it.
But like in Naruto, bloodlines typically guard some power set.
Oh.
And I think a lot of people associate that with what's happening here, because I think that and also I think as some of these people get deeper into the series, I think they'll gain a more nuanced understanding of how bending works. But it is absolutely just a technique sort of situation, right? Like, I think that when you think about the form of metal bending that Toph, uses when it begins and how it contrasts with earthbending, right? Earthbending is about like, pushing and pulling,
right?
And metal is about compressing.
It's funny, right? Because like, it's like there were tons of other examples of weird bending in the series where like
the tearing, right?
Yes. I mean, it is like a literal movement and manipulation of this substance, whereas earthbending is more, it's more fluid and like water bending in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a mixing happen, and it's kind of like the way that Iroh developed his lightning redirection technique using waterbender theory.
Right. Lightning bending is another perfect example. There's a bunch of people doing lightning bending as jobs in this city, and it's like, this is just what happens. I mean, if you think about it, like Iroh talks about this so much in the first season or the first series, where he's like, "Yeah, I developed this
season
this
2.
in season 2." Well, I'm just saying, like he's like, "I learned from waterbenders to develop this new technique that I could use with my bending," and it's like, okay, now we have all 4 elements together again. All of the best and brightest people from the 4 nations are together again. Obviously, things are going to advance. I don't understand why people had a problem with this.
Yeah. Also, I think that think of how hard it was for Katara to get access to waterbending knowledge when she was a child. And that's like a perfect example of why bending didn't go as far back then in this time of war where people were really holding power and ability for themselves.
Right.
And now we're in a world where we're sharing. And also think about like who gets what in the city in Republic City. Waterbenders get shipping. That's not shown, but all trade in that world is like really waterbender favored.
Right.
Because of how boat-based the world is of Avatar.
Right.
And then Earthbenders, I don't know. They obviously maintain the buildings and the streets, I think, because clearly Earthbenders are the ones who screw up the streets the best as well.
Sure.
But like, I think of every time they had to make a ramp when they were in a.
Oh man! Somebody screenshot that mess up on the internet there because West looks great.
And then Firebenders, and then Earthbenders also get the policing, right? Because some Earthbenders can learn to become Metalbenders,
right?
Who clearly, like, unless there are just a huge number of
I think that's unique to Republic City, though, right?
Probably, but not as unique. I think we'll see in season 3. I believe is when we start.
Well, don't spoil it for me.
Well, first off, you can know a little bit of what is happening, and
sure.
It's not a spoiler.
Sure.
And like, but like, Firebenders are about the energy of the place, and woof, like, think about how much we have to abuse in our world resources to get our energy. Now imagine that energy has to come from an individual power. They get a really rough job, Firebenders specifically.
This is my entire point that I was trying to make earlier. Like, you know, at Monson, they're talking about this inequality, and it's like, dude, like, I don't know what the job of non-benders is, but I promise it's not as rough as the job of Firebenders. Like, I promise.
But also, it's very short-sighted what is happening.
Oh, absolutely.
Because benders are the core of like
this industrial, we'll call it, revolution, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
To a large degree. I'm not really sure how they never talk about the power source of Sotomobiles and other Soto tech. But if it's the same stuff that keeps the lights on, then you know, definitely it's short-sighted. But it could also be like trying to enslave. Right, it's going to be a caste reversal.
Yeah, it's true. It's
which is no true equality.
Exactly. Let's move on. I think it's clear that, by the way, neither of us could mention something that we would actually change. We both mentioned things that we didn't love, but I don't think either of us would change anything about this season.
Well, I just know that so much of like what matters to me in Legend of Korra is discomfort and sitting with it.
Oh yeah, you get uncomfortable. I mean, I'm 3 or 4 episodes into season 2. I'm already really uncomfortable. I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Also, I would think of like the night that Korra tries to one-on-one Amon at Avatar at the Statue of Liberty, basically, right?
Right.
And like instead gets just. It's a total, like, one-sided, we could kill you right now if we wanted to, but we're going to let you walk away because it's better for us. Like, the way that Korra responds to that is so hard to just sit with.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Korra gets damaged again and again in this series.
Yeah.
She is asked to take on so much, so young, and instead of it being oh, it's my responsibility to clean this up, which is how Aang feels, having missed the 100 years it all went to
Right.
pot. Korra is like, I thought it was all okay. They told me it was all okay, and I have to fix it all.
West, what was your favorite line, episode, chapter, moment? Like, what was the thing for you in this first book, book one air?
So one event I have that I think is a really funny one is Bolin's tantrum after he sees Mako and Korra kiss, and they find him at his favorite food shop, having spent all night eating. The way that Pabu walks out of there on just his two legs, because he's so like front heavy because his stomach is full, is hilarious. I loved that. And then in the episode where when extremes meet and they go under, maybe not when extremes meet, maybe it's the one after, but when they go under the Sato mansion.
Out of the past?
Yeah. And when Lin finds the hidden way down, I sang to myself very loudly,
Secret tunnel.
Secret tunnel, secret tunnel.
It's so funny.
Under the mountain.
I got a text, I don't know, like 2 weeks ago of TikTok for Secret Tunnel. And I was like, oh man, is this like attributed to me now because I sang it on the show twice? But you know, it's anyway. I love that. It was funny. You text me about that, and I was like, "What was the secret tunnel moment?" And you're like, "The moment where they find the secret tunnel, Spencer." I thought that was great. Any others that really stand out as like your favorite moments?
Yeah, Bolin's night. The night where Mako and Korra are like in the worst of their dispute, and they have a pro bending match. I really liked watching Bolin.
Oh, that's such a good moment.
Together, and like he's like, "No, Mako, you are not doing the one-on-one. You are way off your game tonight.
I loved that.
This one.
I loved
like,
that.
He just converts. I love it. Like it's like every moment that Sokka comes through in the original series. Yeah. Like Bolin, even though he's a bender, he has Sokka's role. And
definitely. He is the Sokka successor for sure. So I have a couple that were kind of my favorite moments. The first is the moment. It's like a kind of a sad moment, but it is one that I really, honestly, as an adult, I don't know, it just really resonated with me for personal reasons that I won't get into in the podcast for what it's worth. But Asami just telling her dad, like, no, F you, like, I'm done. Like, I'm just done.
You reject, your values are not my values.
Not
the values you raised me with.
Yeah, exactly. You are not the person that I thought you were, and not even close to what we should be. Like, it was a really great moment to have her reject him like that. Especially like that moment where her dad, I think the line is something like, "It is clear that you can't be saved," or something along those lines. And she just throws that Uno reverse card right in his face, and I really appreciated that. So that's like probably my number one. I think that my other favorite moments are, man, you stole one of mine, so now I'm trying to remember what my. It's such a good moment, right? Like, because you're right. He has that Sokka role. He's treated like Sokka, so he has this moment where he just takes that ownership and that leadership, and it's really important. And I think that is, you know, a huge part of the show. I do like that last moment where oh my gosh, I'm trying to remember his name. Tarlok kills himself and his brother. I know that it's like a super sad moment. I personally hate suicide. It's something really personal for me. My best friend killed himself, but it was this moment where it's like, I don't know. I both times that I've watched it now, I just was like, good for you, man. Like, you didn't see another way out. It is tragic. It is sad, but you did what you believed was right. I don't know that it was the right decision. I don't know if it's the decision that I would make. But good on Tarlok for saying, I did wrong. I don't know how to save me and my brother here. I don't know. And I don't know if what his brother said about, there was no stopping them moving forward that did it. Like, I don't know if he thought that his brother couldn't be saved. I don't know. But I do know that he made a conscious decision to say, maybe this, I mean, you talk about the bloodline, maybe this world is better without this bloodline. Like, maybe what we have become, I don't know, it's like a greater good moment. It's like this, like, it's funny, right? Because you look at something like the Harry Potter series, and the greater good is meant to be this evil, and they use it for evil. But at the same time, it's this moment where Tarlok is the one making the decision. This bad, the bad guy. Like, he is a bad guy. He made.
Yeah, they're villain 1 and 2 of the season, 100%.
And it's this moment where, for my wife, she had no idea it was coming, and I knew it was coming, and I'm like, just watching it again for the second time, knowing it's coming. It's like, you know what? Good on you, man. Like, it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't know if I would have done it. I don't know if it's right. I don't know, but I do know that Tarlok had a moment where he made the decision that he thought was best for the world, without his father's influence in a lot of ways. I mean, his father's influence is there because his brother is there, but he's making the choice on his own. I don't know. I like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting moment. I wanted to double back to while Hiroshi Sato is the war that really didn't need to happen. I will give him credit for he's always on the front lines of the battles. Like, he flies into the battle against the United Forces ships. Did you notice that?
I did. I
think that it was entirely just to have him on the scene and give him a line, but I would never have expected for the eccentric billionaire funding a terrorist force to actually get his hands dirty. Never would have expected it.
I think it's some hubris with the suits and with the technology, but
I agree. I think it is hubris, but like, his life is on the line, which is more than I would have given him credit for.
Yeah. I think that my last favorite moment is before the kiss. The last kiss, the last embrace. When for Debonair, she thought the series, just like I did the first time that I watched it, was going to be about Korra getting all of the elements back. Which, by the way, would have been great. Would have loved that series too, I'm sure. But, her reaching the Avatar state and instantly learning from everyone again, getting all of the elements back after Amon used blood bending to get rid of all of her other bending. That moment where you're like, okay, Korra is now the Avatar. That is a great moment. I mean, I think that it is a great moment to have in the first season, especially when you come off of Aang's fight with Sozai? What is it? I can't remember his name off the top of my head.
Ozai,
thank you.
Yeah.
Fire Lord Ozai. Like, it is the finale was what it needed to be for the first season of this show.
Yeah.
So, that being said, we've talked about our favorite things. We've talked about our favorite lines. We've talked about the things we might change, which was nothing. We talked about how hard this season was to watch. We talked about a lot in this episode. What is your final impression of this show?
My final impression of season 1,
book 1,
book 1 Air, I think is really one of, like, just, there is a city in this world. There is a modernized city. The world is changing. Where are we going next? I think that's, like, really what's happening, right? Is we're talking about the transition out of fantasy world and a transition into whatever that is plus technology.
Yeah.
and what is an Avatar's place in it. And I think that season 1 does a really good job of talking about it, and I think that that theme comes through heavily throughout the entire series.
My final impression of this first book was that people are easily manipulated.
That's a good one.
And we need to do our part to figure out when and how we're being manipulated so that tomorrow we can influence the world for the better. And I think that the person that does this the best, or the people really, are Mako and Bolin. Like, I think that Mako for a little while is manipulated, but I think that he quickly comes to terms. But those two really do a good job of showing you that the people that have power and the people that have influence over you don't have to dictate how you feel and where you go from here. That you get to make your own choices. And I don't know that there's a message this powerful in the first 3 seasons of Avatar, in all 3 seasons of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Like, while this season was really hard to watch, I think it's because it speaks more to how a lot of the world has been for the last, 20 years. And for me, and for the life that I live here in the United States. And that's hard. That's hard to deal with. That's hard to watch because watching things that you could relate to in a lot of ways. I mean, I talked about how I related to Asami. I'm talking about how I relate to the politics and how politics just when you only look at certain sides to an issue, it just makes things hard. So, with that being said, let's give it a rating. We're on the 1 to 5 scale here. That's how we do it on Need to Nerd. West, I'm going to go first, and I'm going to shock you. I would give this a 5. I think this is better than every single season of Avatar: The Last Airbender. I think that it tells a hard story. It tells an important story. It's also an impossible thing to follow up. You have this huge, beloved franchise through the first 3 seasons, and honestly, I think they did it perfectly. Like, I think they made me feel things. I think they made me care about these characters. I don't know. I wouldn't change a thing. I think it's perfect.
You make a very compelling argument. I think I'm going to have to clock in at 4.5 just because
it's hard to watch.
No. It's 100% just like I can imagine a better cut of The Legend of Korra. I can imagine it. And I'm pretty sure it's if you just add 3 episodes right at the front, they're all just Korra having a good time. All just Korra having a good time, because I feel so bad for that girl by the end of the 12 episodes.
So I actually was curious about this. So the first season of Korra is 12 episodes. The second season of Korra is 14 episodes. Then it's 13. Then it's 13. So actually the shortest season. What if I gave you 2? Is that why you're like, if I gave you 2 episodes, do you think you could make it better?
Yeah, I think that 2 episodes could really improve this. I think that I'd like to see
4.5. I didn't get enough of it. It was so good. I like it.
Specifically, I didn't get enough of Korra living her life.
I think that you get that in the season 2, though, right? Like the season. The thing about the first season. By the way, we don't have to argue with each other here. I'm just giving my perspective. The first season is not actually about Korra. It's actually about building the political ramifications of having the Avatar involved in your politics. And
sure.
And this, I mean, you see that immediately jumping into season 2. Just right off the bat, you're like, "Oh, we should stop doing this."
Yeah, stop involving the Avatar.
This is not what she's for. Please stop.
Yeah, it is interesting that Aang conquered the world, in a sense.
Oh, yes. I mean, to be
He was
fair,
a
the Fire
benevolent
Nation
conqueror.
conquered the world, and Aang conquered the Fire
Nation. The Fire Nation failed to conquer the world.
No, they did not. They won the war easily. They definitely won the war. Come on,
well,
he was lighting the world on fire that he had complete control over.
Yes, and at the same time, he lost the city he had just taken.
Well, that's true, but
we don't really have to get into this, but you're mostly right. But I really do mean that, in a sense, Aang made every single faction in the entire world bow to him.
I think he made them bow to them for what it's worth. Like, I
agree.
I think that it was, for Aang, it was, look at what we did together. An airbender,
Yes.
an earthbender, a waterbender, and Sokka.
For Aang and anyone who was there for it, that is what it was. But that's not how it would be portrayed in a legacy.
I don't know. Like, if you look at even
Aang...
Zuko's grandson, right? Like, they've given these people that were a part of this. I mean, Toph's daughter, Zuko's grandson. The only airbender left in the world is Aang's son. You know, all of these people. Anyway, we could talk about this for hours, so we should probably stop.
Yeah, but the bow I want to wrap it up in is Korra is filling the role of
an impossible
the child
role
of the Emperor.
Yeah, it's true.
Not in a true flesh and blood and political structure sense, but the Avatar, when they're respected and powerful, essentially controls everything in the world if they care. And Aang did care and did stay involved in the world for as long as he possibly could.
Yeah.
And Korra is inheriting that, and people are seeing opportunity. It's really astonishing how much that is what Korra has to deal with, is being is filling the void of the one who succeeded, and people wanting to make her predicted success theirs.
I know I said at the beginning of the episode, she's 17 to start this show, right?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. We got a 4. That has to be our highest rated season of Avatar.
5 and 4.5.
Maybe it's the same. We might have. I was going to say we might have given season 2 a 4 and a 4.5 and a 5 also. I think you gave it a 5. I gave it a 4.5.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I was going to say, do you think they had to sign any liability waivers for pro bending?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Korra's 17. Can she sign for herself? Did she go?
I don't know. I don't know what the age of adulthood is in Republic City. Thank you everybody for watching. If you think the age of adulthood is under 18, give us a like. If you think it's more than 18, give us a comment. Also, thank you so much. Wes, wrap us up.
All I want is someone to give me a complete description of what being a lawyer is like in Republic City.
Impossible. Thank you so much. We'll see you guys all next time.